Here we go. Great. So yes, welcome everybody again. Thank you for joining. So I'll just give you a quick background on the Anticipation Hub community conversation series. So as you may know, we have 98 and I think even 99 partners as of today from across the Red Cross or Crescent movement, NGOs, universities, governments, UN agencies, you name it, we have it as a partner of the Anticipation Hub. And these partners really help us to deliver our strategic priorities around learning, innovation and exchange, providing guidance and support, and promoting policy and advocacy. And we have many different exchange approaches, which we have in the Anticipation Hub. So you might be familiar with our dialogue platforms, but we've also added in this community conversation series to have more in-depth discussions on specific topics that our partners are interested in sharing with other partners and also the wider Anticipatory Action community. And this is also really a space where we want to hear more voices from the regional, local and national levels, and like we have today from the hot Open Mapping Hub in Asia Pacific. So it's really a space for us to have exchange, lots of interaction and engagement, and really you can ask any questions and have a very informal space. So I hope that you enjoy the conversation today. And with that, I hand over to my colleague Madhab Uprety from the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Centre to take us through this community conversation. Over to you, Madhab.
Thank you, Lydia. And yes, welcome you all in this another series of community conversation. And as Lydia highlighted, today we'll be discussing more about the OpenStreetMaps and how exactly this could be used in our overall anticipatory work. So we have obviously, as Lydia already introduced, like the two colleagues from HOT team. So before we formally introduce both of them, I think we can have a quick Menti exercise just to understand whether you are familiar with the OpenStreetMap or not, and the HOT. So with that, I would like to ask Lydia to share the Menti link. So yes, you can see it in the chat over there, and on the code as well, I guess. So Lydia, do you also have the code for that?
Yeah, the link will bring you straight.
Okay, that's great. So I wasn't aware of that. Okay, that's really good.
Yeah.
So okay, so yes, so we have the link. So Lydia, I think you can bring that you can share your screen and you can just see. I think the first question is about whether you are familiar with the OpenStreetMap or not, because since the focus of the discussion today is all about the OpenStreetMap, so just to understand from your side, how familiar are you with this OpenStreetMap? Whether you are using it in your work, just know it but haven't used, and have no idea. So I can clearly see, yes, a lot of you have already been using OpenStreetMap. That's great. And yes, some people knew it, but they haven't used. Hopefully, I think with this conversation, they have an idea of how exactly they can use this OpenStreetMap in their work. Okay, so maybe let's move on the next question, I guess. Yes. So now this is about the HOT. We have the colleagues from the HOT speaking with us. So I just wanted to know whether you know anything about HOT and its work, particularly with relates the OpenStreetMaps. So yes. We haven't got any responses yet. Okay. No. Okay, that's great. So maybe I think our speakers will have to kind of explain it more clearly then. Okay, there are people who haven't really do not know about HOT and its work. We have just one response. Can you yes, no idea. Okay, yes, new for me. Okay, so yeah, we have a lot of colleagues. We have a bit of less idea about the HOT. Some of them have, maybe I think some are already from the team as well. Okay, that's good. Yes, okay. So we have a bit of mixed participants. Okay, that's great. Yes, some are writing that its focuses on the areas that are not well mapped. Yeah, bring the most vulnerable on the map for the humanitarian action, mainly supporting the humanitarian action through mapping work. Yes, use of these open map data tools, completely based on the OpenStreetMaps. Okay, maybe, yeah, we can stop it here, I guess. But yeah, great to see that, yeah, many of you are familiar with the OpenStreetMaps, and at least some of you know what HOT is all about. So let's move on to the conversation now. And as Lydia already mentioned, so we have two colleagues from HOT. So let me introduce them first. So we have Dr. Nama Budhathoki, so who is the regional director for the Open Mapping Hub, Asia Pacific, and he has a very like extensive experience with the open data, with the OpenStreetMaps, all those things, and he will explain that more in the conversation itself. And he has also founded the Kathmandu Living Labs in Nepal, and that's really a very yeah, the exemplar institutions who have done tremendous work in the open data, the OpenStreetMaps, the civic data. So maybe I think some of those work will come in the conversation itself, I guess, from Nama. And yes, we have Honey Fombuena, who is the Geographic Information System, GIS Associate for the Asia in HOT. And yes, she has also been extensively like with the HOT team, particularly based in Philippines, and yeah, mostly working around with the utilization of the GIS and the remote sensing technology to create a lot of these geospatial products and data, and which I guess we will see some of the work that she have been doing as well in the conversation. So with that, I'll now try to move on to the conversation. I'll jump straight to Dr. Nama Budhathoki. As you already see, yeah, there are like some participants who are not a bit aware of what is HOT actually, and like how it, what are its the area of work, like what kind of objective it has. So maybe I think my first question for you, Nama, would be, yeah, just introduce like what is HOT and basically its work, particularly when it comes to this whole open data, OpenStreetMap. So over to you, Nama.
Madhab, thank you very much for a generous introduction. Thank you, Lydia, for organizing this, what we call a community conversation. I've participated in webinars, but I haven't really heard about this term, community conversation. I'm very excited. Yeah, I saw the responses to the Menti questions. I noticed there are quite a bit of people who have heard about HOT, but looks like most of you have not enough knowledge. So let me quickly introduce Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. So HOT is a non-profit organization which is registered in Washington, DC. It was established in 2011 after the earthquake in Haiti. So I bring that up because probably that's relevant to this group, and you can already guess the purpose of that. So when Haiti, the Port-au-Prince, was hit by the earthquake in 2011, there was no map. And then the response activities, people desperately needed maps. And then some of the people who found it hard, I guess they imagined, what if there was a detailed map of the city, Port-au-Prince, that was created before the earthquake. I think that realization gave the birth to HOT. So since then, HOT has been working to create OpenStreetMap data, which I will talk in a minute, a little detail. Its primary focus is disaster. So disaster preparedness. So now we use anticipatory action as a new terminology, and also response. For now, I will talk about some of these things in detail later. For now, so HOT's birth was inspired from the devastating incident in Haiti. So now HOT works in 94 countries around the world. And we do have an ambitious goal to map an area home to 1 billion people, meaning where 1 billion people live. And we want to map those areas. These are either have a high risk of disaster, or these are the areas where people from living are from suffering from multidimensional poverty. So we use these two indicators, risk, disaster, and multidimensional poverty. Based on that two factors, we identify these areas and we map. We'll map. We'll continue to map in 94 countries and 1 billion. That's a big number. And our goal is to engage 1 million mappers. During 5 years, it's already 3rd year, by the way. So because of the pandemic, of course, we haven't been able to do a lot of field activities. We hope we'll be able to do it soon. So how do we get that accomplished? An area home to 1 billion people. How do you map that? So HOT is, and we do have about slightly less than 100 people. It's impossible for us to map those many countries, that big area, without engaging local volunteers, local people. That's why HOT has taken a very interesting direction. So we would like to mobilize local young people, local volunteers as much as possible. And we would like to do that through regional hubs. So we have established 3 regional hubs, one in Asia Pacific region, which I'm hearing. We do have a regional hub in Eastern and Southern Africa, another hub in Western and Northern Africa. We are in the process of establishing a 4th hub in Latin America. So through those hubs, we like to reach out to the local communities, train them, nurture them, engage them, and produce a map. In nutshell, that's HOT. And before I pass it back to Madhab, I would just like to mention our areas of focus. The disaster and climate change is one of our area of focus. Safe migration, sustainable cities, health, and gender equity. So we do have these 5 as the primary areas of focus. But of course, through these, we can it's so big. These 5 areas encompass probably a lot of things. So I stop there. Madhab, pass it to you, and I'll be happy to give further information. If
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Nama, for that. The overview of the HOT, and particularly, highlighting how exactly the HOT came in existence. And you did mention about the different sectors which this open mapping hub is prioritizing. So one thing you did mention about this volunteers through which basically this HOT or the open mapping hub is really able to kind of map these large areas. And to my understanding, I think there are like mappers which are working like do remotely mapping things, and there are these local volunteers as well. So how exactly all this work? I think to really kind of coordinate all these different volunteers and to come up with these different data sets, I think it's quite a bit of task. So I just wanted to understand from your side, like how things works basically with mobilizing these volunteers.
Thanks for asking that question. That's a very important question. Before I answer your question, I would like to spend a minute to talk about OpenStreetMap. So if what I just mentioned before is local, mobilizing local people. Because I also said this is impossible to map the Earth, 94 countries or whatever countries, even one country is too big. So there is a very, very interesting idea that emerged about 17 years ago. when OpenStreetMap was started in 2004. So, we have been mapping for centuries through different ways. Every country has a national mapping agency, which has mandate authority to map that country. There are private sector, they also map for their certain purpose. But then the idea that we started in 2004 is this, every citizen do have their local knowledge. They know where things are, in the disaster torn.
Yeah, you need to on.
Sorry, I accidentally
okay.
pressed the one of the keys. The traditional way of mapping is that there is an organization, a bunch of people, they go to different part of the country or city and they map. They come back, and then as you and I know, that map gets outdated pretty soon because the Earth's surface is changing every day. That means you have to go and remap it again. That's a very expensive task. Big task, expensive task. So then in 2004, we came up with this idea. Well, imagine if we have citizens in different cities, different places, and they're moving, they're working, they're living, they have richer knowledge than the other people, from outside people. So what if we can collect their local knowledge and then put it together in the form of database? That's OpenStreetMap. That was the idea. So idea is profound, I guess. It's very powerful. So in principle, everybody in the planet is a potential mapper. They have local knowledge. They can contribute their knowledge. So that's OpenStreetMap. This is a very different kind of mapping. I mentioned this because without mentioning this, it's difficult for me to answer your question. So now, so if you close your eyes and imagine there are countries, there are cities, and ideally there are a group of people who are already mapping or who will be mapping or who have potential to map their cities, their neighborhood, their community, their villages, their cities, their countries. So HOT does not control these people. HOT does not, what HOT does is we inspire them, we train them. In a way, this is completely decentralized. So we have HOT at the center. I think we have regional hubs, one level of decentralization. And through regional hubs, we actually reach out to communities. We try to create OpenStreetMap communities in different countries, even different cities within countries. And then, we support them, we amplify their work, we nurture them, but the actual work is largely done by this group of people. So it's kind of a self-organizing group of people. They map their communities, but of course, that's one part of the story. But we also do have people who are from outside that country, as you use the word remote mapping. People can contribute remotely. For example, if we have to map a small village in Nepal, people from Nepal and people from outside the Nepal, they both can come together and map that village. So there are different techniques, there are different, technologies, that just say that's how mapping happens. So I don't want to go into the technical details. I just want to keep myself at the idea level at this point. So yes, Madhab, to wrap up, my response to your question, that's exactly what the Open Mapping Hub is trying to do. We're trying to create OpenStreetMap communities in different countries and challenge them. Hey, you do have your local knowledge. Why don't you come together? You map it, you put that data in OpenStreetMap. You can use, other people can use. The group of people like we have here today, they can use in times of disaster. And so that's how things get mapped in OpenStreetMap. I hope I answer your question, Madhab.
Yes, thanks, Nama, for that response. And I have a quick follow-up on that because when we talk about this open data, openness, like open source tools as such, I think one critical question that always come across is about the authenticity of it, the quality of it, because there is nobody like basically controlling anything, right? It's all a collaborative effort. So yeah, just quick question for you, like in terms of having these kind of really developing these quality data sets, like how basically we could ensure, and I think this is very important when I come back to questions relating to the anticipatory action, because this is where we really are thinking of doing investment based on these different data sets. So yeah, a quick follow-up regarding that, how all these things are basically monitored and controlled. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very important question. Every time when I talk about OpenStreetMap, I get that question, and that's very important. Well, you're right. When lots of people are contributing their knowledge, mapping their communities, there could be errors for a variety of reasons. Sometimes people might intentionally put wrong information. In other cases, people might have, because of lack of knowledge and the use of the tool or whatever reason, it is possible that the information that sits in OpenStreetMap data has, some discrepancies. But the idea is that, sometimes we call it a democratization, so that because everything is open in OpenStreetMap, every piece of information an individual puts in OpenStreetMap is open, is immediately available for other people to be seen, to be checked, to be challenged, to be improved. That process, like in democracy, when things are transparent, when things are open, and then if there are, other people have an opportunity to contribute and make things better. So that's why this open, the notion of openness is very important. Otherwise, if there is an error, that error is going to be there forever because other people cannot really see it, other people cannot really correct it. That's the problem with the traditional way of mapping. So that's exactly where OpenStreetMap is different. It's driven by a very different philosophy. So, everybody's knowledge is, I use this term very, very often. Nobody knows everything, everybody knows something. So I can put a road, I can map a road, but maybe I don't know the name of the road. Madhab, you can put the name of the road, maybe you know the name. Maybe Honey can put whether the road is one way or two way, or how many lane road is this, maybe Honey can put it. So because it's open, because anybody can contribute to the system, the idea is that, when we have sufficient number of people to contribute, and then the quality of data will just continue to grow. It will get better and better every next year. Particularly when people begin to use data, when I begin to download data, because it's open, everybody can download for free, I begin to download. And then if there are errors, then I try to improve it. I improve it. So more data is used, when there is more use, and then it becomes better. So I conclude my response by giving you one example. This is exactly the question that was raised in the early days of OSM. So in 2008, there is a famous paper, journal article that was written by a professor from University College London, because then he compared the quality of the data that is produced by Ordnance Survey in the UK. So Ordnance Survey is a mapping agency in the UK. It's a very authoritative mapping agency. So their data and the data from OpenStreetMap was compared. So professor compared these two data sets. And his conclusion was, almost how many years, 30, 40 years ago. He said the quality is comparable. That was amazing. So I'm talking 13, 14 years ago. I think OpenStreetMap has evolved and has become much better now. So quality of data should have been better. But that said, quality also might vary from city to city, from community to community, depending upon how many people are there in the community mapping actively. So, but the question is super important. Thank you.
Thanks, Nama, for clarifying that. And I think it's mainly the way I think OpenStreetMap has evolved in recent years. I think we have seen the increasing use of these kind of open source tools in different kind of decision support system. I think that's also one of the crucial example how these data really are enriching the whole the way we do kind of make decisions. So now I want to get back to Honey, basically, and this is more talking about how exactly all these OpenStreetMaps could be really useful for the anticipatory action, because when we talk about the anticipatory actions, I think there are like certain elements that you need to be put in place. Like you need to have done risk analysis, you need to develop triggers, you need to define actions, finances. There are a lot of things, but I think the crucial important aspect is to really design any kind of anticipatory action. You need to know where and when and why exactly you need to intervene. So I think these three part is really important: when, where, and why. So maybe I think I'd like to listen a bit more from Honey, exactly how these OpenStreetMap and the open data sets could complement this whole risk analysis, the way we make these decisions and interactions. Over to you, Honey.
Thank you for that question, Madhab. Maybe I could share some slides to support my answer. So when we talk about anticipatory action, topics such as impact-based forecasting and early warning systems, they usually come up in the discussion. Although personally, I'm not an expert on anticipatory action, I know for a fact that location is a key factor when we talk about these concepts. And you want to answer the question of where, like where will the hazard occur? Where will it have the greatest impact? Where are the people and the property located? So these questions, if we find the answer, it will give us a sense of how the disaster will happen and the situation that allow us to kind of minimize the risk or mitigate the effects of the hazard. So this is where OSM data can step in. OSM can fill in the data gaps for decision making and disaster preparedness. So first, let's look at how we can use OSM data as exposure data. So OSM, for next slide, please. Okay, so OSM data as exposure data, Nama said a while ago that roads, buildings, these are mapped in OSM. But maybe for the topic of anticipatory action, we want to look at relevant features such as critical lifeline assets. And we have different types of critical lifeline assets mapped in OSM. So we have here essential facilities that are on the health and the welfare of the people, like hospitals, police and fire stations. We also have evacuation centers and schools. We also have mapped transportation systems. Like Nama said, the highways with different classifications. So we have primary, secondary, we also have footpath, and even the hiking trails of some of the tourist spots. And also we have railways and waterways. So I believe transport system is very crucial in determining evacuation routes. That is very important in anticipatory action. We also have lifeline utility systems, such as where can I get drinking water? Where is the electric power station? The communication systems, things like that. These features are also mapped in OSM. And another one is high potential loss facilities, such as the power plants and dams. And lastly, hazardous material facilities like materials recovery facilities. So all of these are mapped in OSM. We can map them out and use them as is. But we can also use OSM further for much more complex analysis, such as for vulnerability and risk assessments. So next slide, please. So exposure data from OSM combined with hazard layers that may come from like your government agency or other repositories. These data sets can be utilized through a mapping or modeling software to produce vulnerability and risk assessments. So this example here is a web application in the Philippines. They are using OSM data, and you can see or observe how residential units are exposed to exposed to flooding, and we can measure the susceptibility to that hazard. We can also see on the right side which critical infrastructures are near the selected point, and if we try to click on one of the critical infrastructure, next slide please, we will be able to know that OSM is not just shapes and points. It contains a lot more of important information that we can use to answer questions like, is this building designated as an evacuation center? So if we look at that specific critical facility, we can see that there is a tag of evacuation center is equal to yes. So therefore, if I am a resident on that area, I can use this facility as an evacuation center. Another question can be, if I will be evacuating in this area, will I be able to have access to like medicine or healthcare services? And if we look closely at OSM, there you can see a health center near the Concepcion Integrated School. So therefore, I can be assured that if I evacuate in that area, there will be health centers, there will be pharmacies near that area, and I can see it all in OSM. And another one will be, if I need food, where can I buy food if I relocate or if I evacuate in that site? So if you look closely, just across the JP Rizal Street, there are food chains that are available for service. So things like that are crucial when we decide for or when we ask anticipatory questions like this one. So another one, next slide please, for a much more specific analysis. We can use mapping softwares. For this one, we use the Quantum GIS or QGIS software, and one of its plugins called the InnoSafe to generate different disaster impact scenarios. So just by using OSM data and hazard data as inputs, we can get important statistics such as how many buildings are affected by the flood. So also we can separate or filter it out with the building type. So these are important statistics that can help us plan our mitigation steps. Next slide, please. So after the assessment, the modeling of impact scenarios, OSM can ultimately help us in our data-driven decision-making. So our example here is a story about the Philaware project. So it's a project wherein HOT collaborated with PDC or the Pacific Disaster Center and partnered with the local government units of the Philippines, specifically in one of the province called Pampanga. And we can see here that critical lifeline infrastructures were mapped in OSM by local volunteers, government units, and members of HOT. And this was done 2020 to 2021. And just this year, this April, a tropical storm hit the place, and this area is very prone to landslide. But because we have mapped critical lifeline infrastructures in the area, the response team of that province was able to track the storm and plot the landslide affected areas and use the critical lifeline data for a more localized response mapping. And ultimately, they were able to send hazard update notifications to the affected communities. So I hope I answered it comprehensively, Madhab.
Thanks,
Now,
Honey.
would you like to?
Thanks, Honey. I think that was really the comprehensive way of like demonstrating like how exactly the OpenStreetMaps could complement the different areas. Like one you like rightly mentioned about enriching the data sets, particularly when it comes to the exposure and then more importantly the vulnerability. I think that is what we normally the humanitarian organization and any development organizations really kind of are struggle to really gather those information, and this is where I think OpenStreetMap has like a lot of things to offer. And also, yes, good thing you highlighted about the impact, the validation. I think those are really important because the whole anticipatory action is all about like addressing those impacts, and we really need to know whether the impacts that we have anticipated really occurred in that particular location or not. So I think with that also we'll have a lot of information. So maybe I'll now get back to Nama just to kind of highlight like few things. I think we hear a lot of the areas which Honey was also explaining about how OpenStreetMap could be used. So anything like any crucial areas that particularly from the Open Map Mapping Hub could really support, I would say, when it comes to these anticipatory actions and any other like things relating to the disaster management. So any areas that you rightly see you could support particularly. So now over to you.
Thank you, Madhab. Just a suggestion, Madhab. Can you keep that question can you read that question towards the end? I don't know what your plan is, if people have questions, if there is some, because we'd also love to hear, doesn't mean we might be able to answer every question, but we'd love to hear, curiosity from people. Is that okay? So I'll be happy to answer your question, but I just want to do that,
Yeah, I think
we conclude.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. At least like let's hear from the audience like what they think, particularly what the opportunity they would see. And I think maybe before that, if there are any emerging questions that is coming. So I could see there is one question particularly in the chat from George, who's asking like, how do you merge the data to create a projection for the anticipatory action? What other data do you use to create a projection to activate an alert node for anticipatory? So maybe I think this is something Honey could explain. Particularly, I think regarding the Fillaware project, I guess I think this is more relates with that. Honey,
Okay.
can you comment?
Yes, Madhab. For the Fillaware project, we collected data on field and uploaded it to OSM. And for the early warning system, it's a different platform that the government created. So they just used the critical infrastructure data from OSM, and they made an application out of that.
Thanks. And also there is one question from Marge. So can we overlay the map with a climate model? Do you open the access to couple the coding of climate model with the hot map? Have we done it before? Maybe I think before Honey or Noah, you answered that. I think this is something we actually did. Particularly, it was in the Burundi, where we try to kind of integrate the climate projection with the open data to really kind of create what are the future hotspot in particularly. So I think this is possible. I think maybe Honey and Nama, if there are any experiences from the Asia Pacific you have when it comes to integrating the open data with the climate model.
Honey, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I think for the Asia Pacific hub, I think that is the goal, but there are no products available yet. But we are gearing towards that path to somehow incorporate different types of disaster models with OSM and provide tools for the community.
Okay, so we have one more question from Margie. So maybe I think this is something that Nama could answer. So regarding the data protection and privacy, what is the hot policy regarding these matters? So over to you, Nama.
We take that question very seriously. So currently what HUD is doing is developing data collection protocol. Now, a guideline protocol, for example, when I said we would like to engage our local communities to map their, the country or city, we want them to do that in the most ethical way. So, the one thing is any piece of data you put in OpenStreetMap becomes public. So meaning, somebody who is putting data in OSM has to be aware, of privacy threat that may eventually result due to a certain piece of information that goes to OSM. That means, so we are developing guidelines. We would like to communicate to the local communities, train them, but at the same time, if there are information that somebody sees, again, everything is because everything is open, and somebody says, oh, this data is really threatening to the privacy of certain people or certain group of people, that conversation just starts in the entire OSM ecosystem, and then we have conversation. There are different mechanisms to resolve that, and then sometimes we delete that. We ask that, for example, I can give you an example. For example, when Nepal Red Cross did some mapping in some part of Nepal, they did VCA, what we call vulnerability capacity assessment, and they also basically went to map every house, normally house, and who's living in that house, children or young people or elderly people, that's not a good way. That's not what OSM was designed for, and that's not the right use of OSM. So then they, OSM community from people outside Nepal, they saw that, and then they wrote emails, collected this data. Can you do this? What can I do about this? So because they see the open system, we do have some mechanism to mitigate those things. But the first thing is that those who upload data has to be careful about and thoughtful about this question.
Thanks, Nama, for responding that question. So yeah, you can see there is a yes. Okay, so Lydia has already brought up the questions, and this is what Nama was also referring. So let's hear from you. Now you have here what the OpenStreetMap is, what are the opportunities it could have with Honey presentation as well. So we just like to hear, where do you see basically the opportunities for the use of OSM to support your work? I think particularly when it relates to the anticipatory action. So we'd like to request all the participants to go through the Menti link that has been, I think it was the same before. So you can just go to that link again, and yes, this is the question that will pop up. So we have got one response only, so let's wait for a few more. So one, we can see, okay, the infrastructure maps are expected to be especially helpful when overlaid. Okay, that's disaster protection. Yes, that's really important. And when it comes to the humanitarian operation, I think the critical infrastructure, the lifeline, I think Honey was mentioning this quite a lot. Those are really important. We really need to know what's the status of these lifeline critical infrastructures, whether they can really respond to any kind of crisis or not. So I think, yeah, these informations would be really crucial to map out. So yes, that's, I can see. Yes, I do see the mention of impact-based forecasting, and this is what is all about, how you integrate all these different data sets with the hazard layer. so that you came up with the prediction of the impacts. And this is really crucial when we are talking about the anticipatory action, because we need to know where these impacts would likely occur and to what scale. So definitely, I think when it comes to the impact-based forecasting, we need to have these data, and this is where the OpenStreet data set, the OpenStreet maps have a huge opportunity to complement. Okay, we also see the drought preparedness in Africa, and this is what I think we have increasingly saw the use of the OSM data when it comes to the drought preparedness in Africa. I think in some of our anticipatory work in drought as well, I think we have started to use these the open data, particularly in terms of predicting the scale of the drought, where exactly this drought could occur, which areas, using all these remote sense data sets. Yes, I can see impact based. Okay, we have 4 responses. Any more? Yeah, the opportunity you see, and you could kind of relate it in the work that you are currently doing. So it could be anticipatory action, or it could be like a general disaster management in particularly. Okay, yes, more about the exposure data sets. I could see, the mapping of the building, transportation layers. I think all these are really crucial when it comes to the determining the area of intervention, because we need to determine like which areas we need to intervene with our anticipatory action. So yes, I think the OSM is a kind of major source of these, particularly where because a lot of these areas, the vulnerable areas, they are not really mapped out, and this is where we need to kind of have, and also the data sets are also not available. So this is where I think doing this open mapping work would help. The crowdsource, yes, I think the whole OpenStreetMap, the philosophy behind it, it's all crowdsource, collaborative effort doing that. So yeah, okay, that's great. So maybe I'll get back to Nama now, looking at these different responses and the way I think the open mapping hub is planning to kind of support the region, particularly the Asia Pacific, and also there are the similar regional hub as well. So what do you see the support basically from the open mapping hub that you could provide to the practitioners who really want to work on anticipatory actions at such? So over to you, Nama, just to highlight a few support things that you could.
Yeah, so glad to see these responses to to the question, and then people have already started to establish connection between their work and OpenStreetMap. Great. So the crux is that when we can collect data and put that in OpenStreetMap, we can also use that information for other purposes. So because collecting data is so expensive, so the question is, how can we create once and reuse. We collect data for anticipatory action, say for exposure data for a particular city, but then that data can be used by also the other agencies. Not only people working in anticipatory action. City government might be able to use this data for planning purpose. Citizens might use the data in an entirely different way that you and I may not have even thought about. So that's the beauty of open data. So otherwise, what happens in many cases is that every group of people are collecting the same piece of data. They're collecting road networks, for their specific use. That means there's lots of duplication of effort. This is wasting our limited resource. That's not good. So that's actually frustrating. So that's something I want to highlight here. So now coming back to the kind of support Open Mapping Hub and HUT can provide. As I said, HUT works in 94 countries. We also do have other regional hubs. And colleagues who are from outside the Asia Pacific region, I would encourage you to reach out to our other hubs. For Asia Pacific, I would say 3 things. There are 3 potential areas where we can support. One, if you got interested to learn more about OpenStreetMap, not only listening, actually making your hands dirty. Using tools, going to the field, collecting data. We can provide training. That's something we keep on doing. So we do lots of training. So of course, in OSM, there are different levels of training. That could be introductory training, that would be more advanced training, training to analyze data, training to download, overlay the OpenStreetMap data with other sources of data. We can do that one. Second one is if you have a data collection project, if you're thinking of a data collection project, for a particular country or city, we're happy to work with you. We are happy to support you. We are also happy to connect you to our local OpenStreetMap community. So that's the direction HOT and HOB is taking. So this is a very exciting direction, by the way. So in the past, HOT used to do lots of things itself, go to the field, do it yourself. But now what we want to do is actually, there is more value if we can connect these two group of people. We can map and we can make use of that data, people like you. And then we can just support in the process. So keep, let us know if you're thinking anything about that, data collection, planning any, projects, whatever. The third one is HOT also develops technology tools. So everything we talk today is this idea, but in order to execute this idea, you need technology. So what are the technology that's available that people can use, you can use to map? What are the tools, what are the technology you can use to download data, to analyze data, to process data? So we also do have a suite of tools, and we're also happy, to give you a quick orientation about the use of some of these tools, at least point you where are these tools, how can you use this, maybe give you some more materials. So that's 3. And then the final is if there is sufficient interest, we can also, I'm inspired to make this announcement. We can talk about detail later, but mainly for the people from Asia Pacific region, I focus in Asia Pacific because of the time zone. It's very difficult to find a time that works for everybody, particularly people from Asia Pacific. We can also think of, doing a kind of in universities, called office hours. So, there is a professor sitting in the room, and then you can just go and drop in, and then you can just ask questions like that. So we can also call it OpenStreetMap Clinic, for example. So that means we can declare an hour. It could be monthly, or once in 2 weeks. So there is, maybe 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. I don't know, the Philippines time. So we'll make sure that there is somebody to answer your questions, to take you through some of these tools. So, but we're interested to hear whether this, also interested to hear from Madhab and Lydia, that would be something the Anticipatory Hub and then the Asia Pacific Open Mapping Hub to jointly, start on an experimental basis and see how effective that becomes. So yes, these are the 3 or 4 different things I could suggest.
Thanks, Nama, for those the points. Maybe I think I would now like to bring here Lydia, and just to kind of also bring where exactly the Anticipation Hub comes in when it comes to kind of facilitating this all kind of action. And I do suspect there is one more question in the Menti where we are asking you what basically you would require or need from the Anticipation Hub and the HOT. So over to you, Lydia.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, Madhab. Thank you, Nama and Honey. Yeah, very exciting to see this. And I love the idea of a clinic. And it's something that we had kind of discussed a bit with the Anticipation Hub before. But yeah, that's definitely something we'd love to explore. So we do have one more Menti question. I'm going to just leave it open, and you can pop in your ideas now or a few minutes after the call, so I'm just worried that we do wrap up on time. So please do tell us what you think you'd need from the Anticipation Hub and HOT in order to really advance on your work on OSM and anticipatory action. And just for the last minute, I wanted to give you just a few little pinpointers, and I'll send this by email around to everybody as well, on just a couple of other things that we have on the Anticipation Hub, which might be of interest and might help you to align with some other actors as well in this field. So we do have an Anticipatory Action community directory, so you can find this on the Anticipation Hub under the Exchange tab. And there you can look for your different partners on Anticipatory Action, and we have some of the different HOT colleagues on there as well. So please do go and have a look. I just pasted it in the chat there, so you're very welcome to use that resource. And we also have working groups. And the one which I would say is most kind of connected to this topic is the one on Earth observation for anticipatory action. And there they explore the different tools and the different opportunities for using Earth observation data, which is of course very important for mapping. So if anybody is interested in getting involved in those working groups, or particularly the Earth observation one, please do let us know. I'm just dropping the link in the chat as well for those working groups, and you can directly reach out to any of the co-chairs, or you can get in touch with myself or Madhab, and we can point you to the right people. We also have, which I think is nicely linked with this topic as well, around OpenStreetMap and volunteers and engaging the next generation and universities. One initiative which we launched recently at the Global Platform on DRR is the Future Leaders Network on early warning, early action. And this is all really about empowering, inspiring the next generation of early warning, early action professionals, and really creating opportunities for them to exchange and learn and connect. So yeah, please do sign up and get involved. I'm also sending you the link there in the chat to that one. And very, very quickly, yes, also just so that you know about our dialogue platforms on anticipatory action, this is the perfect space for you to learn more on anticipatory action, connect with more actors. Most of these are happening in a hybrid format this year. The dates, you can just jot them down quickly. They will be advertised on the Anticipation Hub. So keep following us on Twitter, follow us on LinkedIn, have a look at the website regularly, and you'll get all the different updates from the Anticipation Hub. And also sign up to our newsletter. So here you'll get lots of different resources from the Anticipation Hub team every 2 months. So the next one will be the end of August. So please do sign up, and you can also capture some of the other resources from the previous newsletters through that link. And then lastly, did you enjoy the community conversation? Would you like to have one yourself on a different topic or a similar topic, a follow-up one? Please do let us know. We would love to host more regular community conversations. They're kind of happening ad hoc. So we had one last week. We're having this one, and we have none planned as of yet. So please do let us know if you have suggestions for community conversations. You'll find the recording, as I mentioned at the beginning, of this conversation and of our previous conversations on our YouTube channel, Anticipation Hub. You should be able to find it easily, and there's a special playlist for the community conversations. So yeah, that's it from me. And just to say thank you again to Madhab and Nama and Honey and other colleagues from the HOT community who are there in the audience today. And please do get in touch. You have some links from HOT in the chat there, and I'll send them around by email, so don't worry if you've missed them. And yeah, so thanks again to everybody, and looking forward to interacting with you again through the Anticipation Hub.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Lydia, everyone.